Now, if you've been on any social media whatsoever over the last 5 years, you'll know 3 key words.
There we land.
No.
Here we skedaddle.
No, still not.
Here we go.
By one certain Italian man. These 3 words, first uttered by Fabrizio Romano, have completely altered the transfer market globally. We've gone from the days of surprise transfers, TV reports, and sex dolls to a world of constant, really constant, Jesus Christ, constant transfer reports. But you see, it's not just been altered for us fans wanting to hear new transfer reports. Clubs, agents, players have all been affected by this new currency, otherwise known as a here we go.
Turns my stomach. It's absolutely disgusting.
But in a world of shady reporting and preferential treatment, just what is the truth behind Fabrizio Romano? Now, I know what's going to happen here. I'm going to make a video questioning Fabrizio Romano, and loads of people are going to comment saying that they want me to fall in a ditch and eradicate my other ACL, because he has an extremely large audience of dedicated fans, tens of millions of followers across all of his social media platforms. The guy is a cult hero to the average fan that doesn't really consume his transfer news from multiple sources. They just want one account that's going to tell them everything that's happening. And that's exactly what Fabrizio Romano is. I made a video about him like 2 years ago, I want to say, that kind of concluded that he's not going to be the first person to tell you every piece of news, but he's like an aggregator that will just simply nab stories from other journalists, put them on his page, add 3 words at the end, and get like a decent amount of the credit for it. But Fabrizio Romano, apart from allowing a 12-year-old from the Democratic Republic of Congo to overtake him,
Have you been to school yet?
No.
has been doing other stuff recently where criticism needs to be given to him. But life wasn't always this dramatic for Fabrizio Romano, okay? He was once a young Italian man entering his years of adulthood working for Fiat, the car company, and I assume therefore drinking Tango Ice Blast.
Here we go.
Now, he was inspired by Garth Crooks and was picked up by the former BBC presenter for his extremely high knowledge of Italian football. Fabrizio Romano, back in the day, used to do like news reports and player reports, like very detailed ones, for his own blog and local Italian publications. Garth was impressed by him, even recommended him to BBC bosses, but Garth was once again let down by his way with words.
He almost relaxed, waiting to strike, almost like a cobra.
No, Fabrizio wouldn't end up going to BBC. They've already got enough controversial presenters, but would instead head over to Sky Italia, which is such a massive career step at the age of 20. And it was no real surprise, to be honest with you. He was engrossed by football, alright? Submerged within it. The guy's a Watford fan because of a Football Manager save he did back in the day. Fucking hell, he's a Watford fan. Might go easy on him in this video instead.
Here's Hodge!
We think of Fabrizio Romano right now as involved in pretty much every transfer that happens globally. But that wasn't always the case. The first one that he was really even introduced to and had an actual key part in reporting involved Mauro Icardi, who was once a Barcelona youth graduate, came through the system at La Masia. He would leave though and join Italian side Sampdoria. Now, this wasn't a big deal at the time. Mauro Icardi, of course, is a pretty big name these days. I mean, nowadays, if you wrote a report on him being unfaithful to his partner every week, you'd probably get it right 1 out of 3 times. The guy has 115 charges over his own head, and they're all to do with cheating. But at the time, it was a bit of a nothing story. Icardi's agent came to him wanting to promote the deal. He duly did so. The next time Icardi then moved on, which was a much bigger deal going to Inter, that agent then returned the favour by giving him the exclusive. And the Italian audience was nice, but he knew that he could branch out into English transfers. Hence, he started doing some writing for The Guardian, and that's when things really started to accelerate. Especially when a deal between the Italian market and the English market would become very apparent back in 2016. This was Paul Pogba, alright? Rumours had been circulating for months that he would be heading back to Manchester United, where he graduated as a youngster. This was a saga, okay? This went on for time. There were constant hurdles in the road. You couldn't go more than 6 minutes without hearing some sort of report or update about this move on social media. Fabrizio Romano was given those live updates, gained a lot of traction, and realised, hold on a second, what if every single transfer in the world was a saga like this one? What if even a right-back signing for Bristol City took years off your life expectancy by being constantly told information that his agent has gone to lunch at Greg's for the afternoon for a 16th day in a row? We were introduced to every step of the way updates, alright? If a footballer put new shin pads on, here we go. If he was blackmailed by his own brother, here we go. Fabrizio, please, he's kidnapped me. I really need you to actually take this man to task with actual journalism. Paul Pogba to back of Van, here we go. You realise people didn't just love the meal, they loved the the actual preparation of the dish. And that's what continued with Bruno Fernandes's move to Manchester United. United fans across the globe were obsessed with the way that Fabrizio was covering this deal. They knew globally he was the only source they could rely on for constant updates on this move. His numbers on socials skyrocketed to what they are today. He won awards in the writing spheres, in the journalism spheres, and on the face of it seemed like a very reputable source of all transfer news. And it led to a situation where twice a year you couldn't go more than 7 seconds without hearing this Don's name, in the summer and in January. A tweet from this man was about as regular as a man being contracted to Chelsea. Notoriously, he spends 20 hours a day on his phone during a transfer window, and I can only imagine doing extremely important tasks. But with constant updates, clutter, and noise on social media, another problem has arisen. There's no shock value to transfers anymore. Does anyone remember when Mesut Ozil signed for Arsenal? Okay, this was a massive deal. There've been rumours about it, right? But back then, it was just rumours, okay? You had journalists going on Sky Sports saying, we think something is going on, we think agents have met up, but it wasn't like crazy amounts of concrete evidence. And at the end of the day, you didn't really know that a deal was done until it was reported on TV. That classic shot of Arsenal fans like celebrating behind the Sky Sports News reporter on deadline day stuck with us forever. And for Arsenal fans, I'm sure that moment was absolutely incredible. That doesn't happen anymore. I mean, Portsmouth, for fuck's sake, were even annoyed that he'd ruined a transfer announcement that they wanted to do. This is a newly promoted championship side, for fuck's sake. Nobody has any business telling me that a signing to Portsmouth has happened before Portsmouth tell me. Honestly, the only signings I can think of in the Premier League recently that are actual shocks were Ross Barkley signing for Luton last year and Wilson Odobert signing for Tottenham. Don't think he covered that at all. It's even ruining the Ballon d'Or, for fuck's sake. Like, I don't have a problem with reporting on a transfer, okay? We get people like David Ornstein doing that as well. At the end of the day, it is his job to be a journalist. It is his job to get the scoop, and it is his job to report on it. I'm a qualified journalist, okay? Ooh. I'm never gonna get upset at someone for simply reporting stuff that they find out. But we are at such a level now where there is no shock to anything that happens in football. Why am I finding out a Ballon d'Or winner 3 months before the ceremonies even happened? And in a world of exclusives and scoops, Fabrizio Romano knows everything that's gonna happen before it happens, right? Well, except for games. You can never predict what's gonna happen in an actual football match. Therefore, he doesn't really cover them, right? Well, that was until this season when I noticed something very, very bizarre starting to happen that Fabrizio Romano has been involved in. You see, one man that made a move during the transfer window during the summer, and one that was to some extent a saga given the context that surrounded it, was Mason Greenwood. All right, now he left Manchester United to join Ligue 1 outfit Marseille for around about 26 million euros. It happened very recently, it happened very controversially, and it was something that we kind of all knew was going to happen because I don't think Manchester United would have ever survived playing Mason Greenwood again, given revelations that came out in 2022, where Mason Greenwood's girlfriend posted images and audio messages of herself, battered and bruised, and being threatened by Mason Greenwood. Now, these were pretty comprehensive audio messages, they were pretty comprehensive photos. There was an entire legal battle that was in the end dropped because, like, an important witness dropped out of the proceedings. That's not the same as him being cleared, which, again, I want to clear up. A lot of people saw that happen and were like, oh yeah, he's innocent. That's actually legally not true. The case was just dropped. That's all that happened. Doesn't really give an indicator as to anyone being innocent or guilty. But either way, that happened. Mason was unsurprisingly suspended for a long period of time at Manchester United. Anyone with a minimum of 4 brain cells made some level of decision on Mason Greenwood's character and the situation and came to a conclusion that he should absolutely never play for Manchester United again. It was a massive stack of evidence. It was pretty shocking how he treated his girlfriend. And any journalist worth their salt knew that if he was going to make a comeback, there would really only be one way to treat the story, and that would be with some level of care, some level of respect to the victim, and some level of duty to provide context, really, whenever anything happened in his career from that point onwards. So Mason Greenwood goes on loan last year to La Liga outfit Getafe, scores a decent amount of goals. Obviously, it's a very controversial move. Getafe's Twitter account go on some mad propaganda run of calling him their star boy. It's pretty sickening, to be honest with you, but hey, they're a club that's employing him, so I guess they got vested interest. Journalists have no reason to do so. So you'd think when Fabrizio Romano saw that Mason Greenwood's move to Marseille was happening, it would be treated with a decent amount of respect. I mean, he tweeted about it a lot, okay, first of all. But in fairness, a deal was happening, all right? At the end of the day, he is a journalist reporting on news that has occurred. And what had occurred during the summer was Mason Greenwood signing for Marseille. There was a bit of drama about it, whether it was going to happen or not, so him simply reporting on it, cool. I mean, he could do us the service of at least providing some context, but whatever. But that would be probably the end of it, right? Well, 3 minutes into his debut in Ligue 1, Mason Greenwood scored his first goal for the club. Now, Fabrizio Romano doesn't really deal with, actual match match reports, okay? That's not his bread and butter. It's transfers, all right? But as soon as he scored this goal, Fab was telling us about it. He went over to Twitter and said that Mason Greenwood had scored 3 minutes into his debut. Simple tweet, explains what happens. Bit weird, to be honest with you, given the context, and also given Fabrizio doesn't really do this. Then, a little bit later on in the first half, Mason Greenwood would score again, right? So he scored a brace on his debut. This situation starts to get a little bit more problematic because Fabrizio tweets again. This time, he's saying that, you know, Mason scored a brace on his debut, but he says it's an excellent debut for the new Marseille player. An excellent debut, indicating, you know, good footballer, some level of positivity, some praise directly from Fabrizio. He's not actually quoting anyone. He's just going out of his own way to say that Mason Greenwood's played well in his first game. Very odd. Now we're getting to the point where this just doesn't happen at all. I don't think I've even seen him post about a player scoring a brace like back-to-back in the game at all so far this season. Erling Haaland scored a hat-trick against Ipswich. I don't think he did it for that. And again, no context provided to the backstory of Mason Greenwood. Instead, he's actually praising him. And then that would be joined by a third tweet after full time where Fabrizio quoted Roberto De Zerbi, the new Marseille manager, saying that where Roberto had called him like a world-class player and hoped that all the media controversy would fall away from him now. We're getting into the realms of propaganda. Okay, now let me let you into a secret, okay? Journalists don't write things because they want to. Journalists write things either because they know that it's going to get a certain reaction or there's a reason or an agenda behind writing that certain thing. This is, again, just pure copy from a quote that Roberto De Zerbi has said in a post-match interview, but it once again removes any context whatsoever that Fabrizio could give about Greenwood's past and instead belittles what is alleged domestic abuse into a small media issue. A slight controversy that could just be dispelled by him scoring 2 goals against Brest. And this is the other thing, like, this is very strange for Fabrizio to be covering a game between Marseille and Brest in such detail. I said earlier on that he doesn't really deal with match reports. He has started doing them for the Premier League recently, but outside of the Prem, he doesn't do it for any other league, okay? I've scoured through, he doesn't really do match reports, goal reports for any of the major 5 leagues outside of England. And even then, in this situation, he's live tweeting a game between Marseille and Brest. No offense, yeah, but especially in the situation that Ligue 1 he currently finds itself in, nobody cares. Like, if we're gonna be real, people barely care about PSG this season. Not many people outside of Marseille and Brest fans care about a football match between Marseille and Brest, okay? The only reason he is tweeting that is because Mason Greenwood is involved. Him scoring a brace against Brest is not a particularly extraordinary, like, news story if you remove the context of Mason Greenwood. And in terms of comparisons to other players that have made debuts and scored on debuts since joining the new clubs, Alvaro Morata, for example, just won the Euros with Spain, didn't receive a tweet when he scored on his debut for Milan. Alexander Sorloth, again, has just gone to Atletico Madrid, no mention of his first goal after signing for the club. Not a new signing, but Lamine Yamal did receive 1 tweet when he scored his first goal of the season, but as a future, probably multi-time Ballon d'Or winner who's got the world at his feet and just won the Euros, he's a much higher profile than Mason Greenwood in terms of footballing ability and in terms of his future in the sport, realistically, again, the Mason Greenwood. Endrick, in fairness, received 2 tweets when he scored his first goal for Real Madrid on the weekend, but again, he's getting out-covered by a man scoring a brace against Brest in Ligue 1. I mean, the ultimate comparison is that Elia Wahi, who's also in Marseille's front line and has also done some very questionable things in his life, didn't receive a single tweet at all, having scored a debut goal in the same match as Mason did. It's a disproportionate amount of reporting for a player who ultimately won Getafe's Player of the Season last year, and that's all he's done out on the pitch footballing-wise in the last 3 years. And that's kind of where things started, you know, Fabrizio Romano covered him winning Getafe's Player of the Season. Again, just not something he ever really talks about. Certainly, unless somebody needs to be moved on to a new club, for example. And this is again where I talk about motive, alright? And again, I know this, yeah, I've not been a fucking top-level journalist in my life, alright? Obviously, I know that. When you look at any headline or any news report or any coverage of anything, you have to think about who's reporting it, what a potential motive would be for reporting it, and who the overall storylines are in it, okay? Now, Fabrizio Romano going out of his way to tweet about Mason Greenwood being Getafe's Player of the Season or him scoring a brace in a Marseille game when he never does that for anybody else at all in a transfer window has to make you think that there is something else, some other reason why he's doing that. Now, I'm not going to speculate what necessarily that motivation could be, but as a scoopster, as someone that relies on exclusivity when it comes to transfers and deals, he has to have a very good relationship with agents, right? That's just a fact. There's no way he could have got to where he is without being extremely close to agents that are a very big deal. Otherwise, they wouldn't tell him stuff. At the end of the day, they give him the exclusives. He then writes about them. He then, you know, helps them shift a player. If a player needs to be moved on, he'll be there on Twitter saying, this guy is available. Certain teams are interested. He can either inflate the value of that player, earn them a little bit more money, or just simply get them a move. No, they scratch each other's backs. He's been quoted as saying that he doesn't really cover things that aren't transfer activity in the past. Fair. I mean, I think personally, you do have some level of responsibility as a big journalist like that to cover things and give them context if there's serious issues. But hey, if he wants to brand himself as a transfer journalist and transfer guru alone, and that's fine, probably stop doing the Mason Greenwood match reports then in that case, Fab. The only time he ever mentioned Mason before the Getafe move was Mason Greenwood's statement, where Mason himself wrongly suggested that he'd been cleared of the charges, whereas, as I said earlier, he'd actually just had the case dropped because a witness had dropped out of it. Very, very different things legally again. And it also covered comments by La Liga's president, Javier Tebas, who said that he basically doesn't care about Mason Greenwood's past because he's performing well for Getafe. So morally, some excellent grounds to base the rest of this Mason Greenwood coverage on. Now, once again, I'm not going to speculate on why, or even suggest my own opinions legally on why Fabrizio Romano may have taken interest in the Mason Greenwood situation and spun some of his performances into such a positive light in comparison to other players who are doing similar, if not a better job out on the pitch. But in the same way that Fabrizio Romano just covers things that people say and just slaps them onto Twitter like he did with Roberto De Zerbi's quotes, I'm gonna do the same with an article from Tipsbladet, who have said a few things in their own words that are nothing in relation to mine, and they posted on their own site. Where in relation to Copenhagen youngster Rooney Bargi, allegedly a company that is linked to Fabrizio Romano had made an offer to an agent suggesting that they'd want to put tweets out or share some coverage in return for a certain price. They wrote in their article that it is a business where clubs and agents will need to pay for the publicity, and that can never be labelled as journalism. And I think that should be the lesson here. What might look like journalism are instead driven by pure commercial interests. Charles Bohm tweeted that a Norwegian media report alleged that Vålerenga were approached by a company, again linked potentially to Fabrizio Romano, allegedly, called Memo, and they'd need to pay that company $1,100 for a social media post, $196 for a personal greeting, I don't even know what that is, and then $6,000 for one video. So that's it. Again, just reading quotes from other people with no context whatsoever. Either way, very strange situation, and I think it just needs to be called out because it's much bigger than a slightly controversial footballer signing for somebody else. It just kind of goes above and beyond football, the story, the context of Mason Greenwood. I've covered it on this channel before because I think some people, some players, some TV personalities as well are afraid to talk about it at all because they're like, oh yeah, it happened 3 years ago, so it's not a problem. But it absolutely is, and in my opinion, the only thing I'm going to say that's my opinion in this video is that Fabrizio Romano should be doing more to not make Mason Greenwood's story come across like some trivial drama that's like absolutely a background that has been overshadowed by him scoring 2 goals against Brest in Ligue 1. Because it's not. The story of Mason Greenwood is much bigger than that and seems to be overlooked conveniently when reporting to his millions of followers. Now, I know this video is it's gonna be a talking point. Fabrizio Romano is a talking point anyway, but I hope, you know, taking that information in, you maybe, I don't know, had a second thought on how you kind of consume news, especially from journalists like Fabrizio Romano, because it's not always as it seems on the face of it, and it's kind of just disappointing. You know what? Yeah, when Fabrizio Romano first came onto the scene, I was actually quite a big fan. Not in terms of like an actual fan, but I mean as in like, he's very charismatic, he delivers his news in at the time, certainly a unique way, and he definitely capitalized on the sort of growing nature of social media updates when it comes to transfer news and activity, and I think he did an excellent job of doing that. But I think over the last 2 years has definitely kind of removed himself from the actual validity of the journalism and has almost gone down a completely different route entirely, which has been disappointing, and that's been highlighted by what's been going on here. But either way, I hope you've enjoyed this video. Feel free to slap a like on it if you did enjoy, and subscribe if you are new to the channel. You can also follow me on social media. It is at @officialfng on Twitter and on Insta. But it's been a pleasure ranting at you guys today. Have a wonderful day, enjoy yourselves, and goodbye.